On December 14th, 1972, humans left the moon for the last time. 45 years later to the date, President Trump signed the Space Policy Directive 1, which amended President Obama's Presidential Policy Directive 4, also known as the National Space Policy of the United States of America. The amended policy led to the creation of the Artemis space program in 2019 with the goal of returning to the moon to stay by 2024. This ambitious plan would come to fruition in just a few years, that is, unless it goes all James Webb on us. But how will it get done? While mavericks like Elon Musk have plans to get to Mars on similar timelines, NASA's more measured approach focuses on establishing infrastructure and a permanent presence on the moon by the end of the decade. Will Artemis be a success like its twin brother Apollo, or will it be resigned to the history books along with countless other discontinued space programs? Only time will tell, but let's take a closer look at the goals and missions of this program. For the fiscal year of 2020, NASA's budget was $22.6 billion, comprising 0.48% of the federal budget. Adjusted for inflation, that is the highest budget since 1997, suggesting that the plateau in space exploration we experienced during the first 2 decades of the 21st century may be coming to an end. With private spaceflight lowering the cost of space travel and introducing more profit incentives into the industry, the number of rocket launches per year started to increase from a low point in 2004. 2018 saw the most rocket launches since 1990. We are truly entering a second space race, and this time NASA is focusing on partnerships with the private sector in order to maximize the utility of its budget. Directive 4, all the way back in 2010, sought partnerships with the private sector to enable safe, reliable, and cost-effective commercial spaceflight capabilities and services. The more recent Directive 1 doubled down on this notion, planning to lead an innovative and sustainable program of exploration with commercial and international partners. In the last 40 years, launch costs per kilogram have decreased almost 100-fold adjusted for inflation, and a lot of that decline has occurred in the last decade alone. With the great advent of inexpensive rocketry, the private sector provides an important resource to NASA, along with long-standing international cooperation. So let's get back to the moon, and let's do it on the cheap. While it is exciting to be gung-ho, NASA is much more measured and careful than it used to be, and I think that's a good thing. Without commies to fight, and after a myriad of tragedies, some of the risks NASA used to take are unjustifiable today. Considering that the ultimate goal of space exploration is to have people living in space, space travel has to become a lot safer than it is even today. If just 1% of airplanes crashed, people would be very reluctant to set foot on one. And even with incredibly low failure rates, a fear of flying is common amongst the population. No, spaceflight must be conducted more responsibly in this second space race, and part of that is the Lunar Gateway incorporated into the Artemis program. The Lunar Gateway is a small space station that will be built in orbit of the moon, preferably before a human return to the surface, but definitely before a permanent presence on the surface. An international effort, the space station is reminiscent of the ISS we built 20 years ago, and the decades of experimentation and habitation we have under our belt will give us insight in how to build and operate the Gateway. For moon missions, the Gateway will serve as a hub for supplies and communications. As we venture out into space, missions are becoming increasingly complex. No longer could a single rocket launch suffice. Instead, the pieces of a mission can be sent to the Gateway, assembled there, then the crew can arrive and carry out their duties. All in all, the Gateway will be able to support 4 people for 30 days. Not as luxurious as the ISS, but pragmatic and an important step in human spaceflight. Before the Gateway will be built, however, another important step in preparing for habitation on the moon is the demonstration of in situ resource utilization. ISRU is the ability to use local materials for a mission instead of materials launched with the crew, thus cutting down on launch costs. The south pole of the moon has been theorized to contain water ice in shadowy craters, so it is the primary target for the next moon landing. In 2018, NASA unveiled the Commercial Lunar Payload Services Program, which will work with private contractors to send unmanned missions to the moon to test out techniques that could be used to support a future moon base. Now, the missions. Artemis 1 is planned for November of 2021. It will be an uncrewed mission sending the Orion spacecraft on a trajectory around the moon and back to Earth to certify it for human travel. Then Artemis 2 will fly the same route in August of 2023, but with a crew of 4 astronauts on board. Similar to Apollo 8, this mission will merely fly past the moon rather than land on it, which is still a feat humans have not done for decades. Finally, Artemis 3 will bring 4 astronauts to the moon in October of 2024. 2 will land on the surface of the moon and 2 will remain in orbit. Those on the moon's surface will remain there for a week, more than doubling Apollo 17's record of 3 days. After that, the timeline gets a little fuzzier. Artemis 3 may or may not have the Lunar Gateway to use for its mission. If not, the orbiting astronauts will remain in their spacecraft like those during the Apollo missions. After that, a whole slew of Artemis missions are planned involving the Lunar Gateway as a transport hub. These missions would spend the latter half of the 2020s building up a self-sufficient base on the moon. By 2030, with in-situ resource utilization and easy transportation to the Gateway and Earth, a permanent settlement on the moon will exist, built by commercial and international cooperation. From there, there's a whole number of routes humanity could take with space exploration, and likely multiple at the same time. While some focus on building up the moon's permanent population, others will take advantage of the moon's small gravity well to launch missions to Mars in the 2030s. Investment in space will take off at this point in the future, because space is an untapped gold mine of material and energy wealth. Currently, endeavors in space come at a net cost to us, although I would consider the scientific discoveries made to be priceless. But there will come a tipping point in the future where launching a rocket will give you a return on your investment. Now, this isn't exactly set in stone, and it isn't free of problems either. To deal with the legal ramifications of in-situ resource utilization, over half a dozen nations signed the Artemis Accords back in October, a document building on the principles of the 1967 Outer Space Treaty. Problems still remain, however. Too many to list. They range from legal to scientific to methodological to political. There is fierce debate around this program, but the key takeaway is this. NASA's budget for the fiscal year 2021 is 12% greater than its already large budget for 2020. Whether Artemis comes to its full fruition, advancements have been made and are being made in space travel, and all in all, they make me pretty hopeful for humanity's future. Thank you all for watching this video. I find the politics of space exploration fairly interesting. One negative aspect of American democracy is that scientific development programs can be disrupted by administration changes or shifting tides in Congress. That's why the Artemis program is so interesting. With a human return to the moon planned for October of 2024, we are only one presidential term away from this great scientific achievement. If Artemis doesn't face any delays, a dubious prospect for ambitious programs, it could be one of the greatest achievements of President Biden and would help him achieve re-election should he choose to run in 2024. My main point is this. It is incredible to live just 4 years away from a possible return of human habitation on the moon. And if you are fascinated in politics like I am, then make sure to check out my new second channel, GovernMax, where I will cover congressional legislation, presidential action, and judicial decision-making. Happy holidays and Happy New Year's. See you all in 2021.